if someone were to approach me today and they'd see that I'm 21 years old, it's not gonna faze them that they're gonna leave their €250,000 car with me, because I've already done €250,000 cars. My name is Gianluca Agius. I'm 21 years old and I run executive auto detailing. It's a passion that started as a hobby and slowly ended up turning into my full-time job, basically. For as long as I can remember, I was always into cars. I was massively into video games as a kid, especially the Need for Speed franchise. My father has a 1997 BMW 7 Series, same one that you can find in the James Bond film, and my dad used to leave it up to me to find what was wrong with the car. So I used to go on forums and just read about the car, and I just really fell in love with how the mechanical bits of a car work. It just really interested me how these pieces of metal can go together to create either a really nice sound or a really fast car, or even just a really good looking car. I was never really into this before I bought my car. I have a 2016 Mark 7 Golf that I was very fortunate to buy new, and when I bought that car I wanted to keep it in pristine condition because it was the first sort of new car in the family in about 15 years. I used to watch a lot of videos on YouTube of, for example, S1E1 150, Paul Wallace of Supercars of London, and they used to go to these companies where they used to protect their car with paint protection film, or wrap their cars, or polish their cars, and that got me interested into it and showing that the car can look even better than it does out of the showroom. Before that, I just used to wash cars using a sponge, kamosha, even sometimes, admittedly, a kitchen sponge and some dish soap on my mom's car. But when I got my car, I knew that there were better processes on how to take care of it, and I just simply started doing that to that car. Jokingly, really, my friends told me to wash their cars. I said, sure, why not? But I had this real fire and passion for keeping cars basically looking really good. I started it mainly because I needed a job in summer of 2017. My mom kept bugging me, telling me, go get work, go give your CV out. But I said, in the meantime, let me do this for some spare change. I mean, it was nothing at the time. Quite honestly, my parents were not very much into it at the time because I just used to wash cars. So I basically was just washing cars for a living. School put me in a position where I didn't feel like I believed in myself. However, the way that the business grew and the way that I started working on cars and the compliments I started receiving really made me realize that I'm doing something right. I must be doing something right for me to be so booked. Everything I heard during the summer, so I mean over 3 months I earned maybe €300, €350. I bought my first polisher, which was €280 at the time. And I in fact still have it just to keep it as like a memento. Obviously, you have to start somewhere. You can't just get into this straight away and from nothing start detailing supercars. So I had repainted the garage just so I could try upsell myself to more high-end clients. And in fact, it worked. In March 2018, I had done a BMW M2, which was sort of my first high-end car, first sports car. And it was the first car I had worked on that was brand spanking new. It had 52 kilometers on it and went straight from the showroom into my garage. They hadn't even cleaned it because the owner specifically told the dealership, don't wash it so we can leave it to our detailer. And I had worked on that. I had done the upgrades and investments in the garage, and it worked out because I got more clients and I had actually got my first booking on the first super unique car, which was the HSV GTSR Maloo that I worked on. Had no idea what it was. The owner, when he called me, basically told me, I have this one-of-one car. I'd like you to detail it, but I'm gonna come to your garage so you give me a quote. I was like, sure, no problem. In my mind, I was freaking out, like, oh my God, this is the first unique car. I was thinking maybe secret high-end Porsche or a high-end Ferrari or even a Lamborghini. Then when he had come to my garage, to see this youth in front of my garage, I was just blown away. I was starstruck because this is a car I had seen sort of on Top Gear or on YouTube. I had posted the photos of finishing that car on Facebook and it blew up. A lot of people started talking about it. People used to see the car and then they'd message me telling me, oh my God, I just saw the Ute you just did. And from that point on, really and truly, it just kept growing. I got one more booking, did that car, got another 2 bookings, and slowly filled up my slots. And by May of 2018, I had all 3 months of summer booked every single week, back to back, full of cars for paint corrections and ceramic coatings. So my age was the biggest issue. I didn't really tell anyone how old I was. They only would come and see me when they would drop their car off. And frequently I had people coming to the address and them asking me, where's executive auto detailing? Where's there executive auto detailing in the street? And say, I'm executive. And they're like, oh, okay, and how old are you? And I'd be like, well, I'm 19. And first they'd be a bit weary to leave their car, but then they would be incredibly impressed as to the quality of work that I'd put out. And they'd tell me, like, well done, keep doing what you're doing, because not many people have the passion and the drive that you do at 19. If someone were to approach me today and they'd see that I'm 21 years old, it's not gonna faze them that they're gonna leave their €250,000 car with me, because I've already done €250,000 cars. So clearly I know what I'm doing, and they trust me enough to leave their cars with me. Some people are so impressed that I'm doing this at 21 that they want to bring their cars to me, because they know that what they're going to receive is high quality work, even if it takes me longer. And the fact that I'm in university also impresses them, because it's hard juggling this. I mean, it's a lot of sacrifice and a lot of struggle, really. Basically, it's a lot of time and a lot of patience, and making sure you have the right eye for seeing dirt in certain places that most people might not. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that most people don't realize. Most people would think a paint correction is just simply getting a machine, very quickly polishing a car, making it shiny, and then letting it go out. It's all about testing in the beginning. You need to test pads with polishes and compounds and products to find the right method that works for a car, because no car is the same because of the humidity of the day, for example, when it was sprayed. Even though they're in extremely well-controlled environments, when it comes to curing, it could cure slightly differently, which would cause differences in the paint when it comes to polishing it and working on it. When it comes to washing cars, it's best to use deionized water. Our water, unfortunately, in Malta is very calcium rich because it passes through our aquifer system, and our rock is full of calcium. Plus we get most of our water from the reverse osmosis system. It tends to leave calcium and chlorine in it, which is not very good to leave sitting on paint. You need to make sure water is not sitting in edges or gaps or panels, because it can start eating away at clear coat. It can create water spots. It can create etching marks. People think it can be done in a day. To do a job properly, no, it cannot be done in a day, because before the paint correction, there's the thorough cleaning that needs to be done. Once a car comes in the garage, if it's going to go through the paint correction stage, it's given a very good wash, about 3 washes in fact. Because first is a decontamination wash, which is basically using citrus-based products to help strip previous polishes, glazes, or waxes that might be left on the paint, giving it a thorough clean. So nooks, crannies, body edges, so somewhere here for example, would need to be very well cleaned. So when it comes to actually detailing it, you're not going to get dirt in your pad, in your towel, or for example in the case of PPF, on the edge of PPF, because then it won't stick. Then there's a physical and chemical decontamination stage, which basically means you're using either an iron fallout remover or a clay bar to remove chemically bonded dirt that sticks to your paint, because it's essentially pollution that falls from the atmosphere, sits on your car, and will chemically bond you to the heat. As the heat heats up the surface, microscopically the paint expands, the pores expand of the paint. Fragments will then fall into the open pores of the paint, and as it contracts, they will sit and then eventually bond to your paint. If you don't do that step and you start polishing, all that material is going to start filling up in your pads, diminishing the effectiveness of the pad, possibly creating even more damage to the paint than needed. And after the decontamination, it's moved back here, where I inspected under these lights and some other handheld lights that are specifically designed for paint. I start measuring the depth of the paint to see levels, either if a panel's been resprayed, which to be honest at this point I can visually tell when a panel has been resprayed. Taping off plastic panels and plastic edges, taping off vents, taping off lights. And at the end of the day, behind the detailing and behind all the polishing and the ceramic coatings, there's the environment we're in. So we have background costs as well, which people don't consider. It's not cheap running these lights, obviously. The equipment we need, it's extremely special equipment. A polisher can easily run you 550 euros. You might need a 1-inch machine with a 1-inch pad just to simply work on somewhere here, for example, and it can cost you up to 700 euros. Even when it comes to the ceramic coatings, they're not difficult to apply, no, but the knowledge of applying them and knowing what goes into it and the technology behind it helps you apply the coating better. It helps you know when you can let the car go out, lets you know how to wash the car properly, what chemicals to use. So it's not simply a 50 euro double buffer, as most multis will easily say, and I've gotten it a lot of times. It's work that can take 10 hours to 50 hours. Really and truly, when it comes to these kinds of cars, it's very different to working on your everyday sort of VW or Fiat or Audi, because the game really is preservation over perfection with these supercars. Just like the classics of the same brand, they've been out on the road for 30, 40, 50 years. And most of these cars have original paint. When you polish a car, you're effectively removing a very tiny layer of clear coat. A polish is an abrasive. You're removing a tiny layer to level out the paint so that you remove the defects. Obviously, this is on a microscopic scale. So when it comes to these cars, you have to be extra cautious because you don't want to remove too much paint in the aim of removing one scratch, for example. Because if the car is out on the road for another 20 years, that panel would be compromised, and more than likely it would eventually need to be resprayed because the effects of the sun on that panel would break down the clear coat more than it needs to be broken down. And even the shapes of the car, these have really tight angles and tight spaces that most everyday cars don't. I mean, things like down here where the air passes through the radiators for the back. Doing a tiny channel like down here is much more difficult and requires more specialized tools than it would on a normal car. Having your car detailed is, in my opinion, quite a nice experience because in most cases, people will come in with cars that have been out on the road already, have lots of swirl marks, and in some cases, most of them buy them secondhand. So when you bring it to a detailer, we're basically taking back those years that were on the car, getting it back to, in most cases, a better than brand new finish. So you can experience your secondhand car in a brand new way. A client went to show a friend of his car, who was a sprayer, and he thought he had resprayed the car with how glossy and shiny the car looked after my work. Even when it comes to new cars, cars come out of showrooms with defects in them. So there can be holograms in paint, defects in the paint such as paint nibs as well, which is dust that would have gone underneath the paint, which you can sometimes fix. And even the way that most dealerships wash cars, they don't wash them properly before they leave their showroom, so they end up causing swirl marks themselves. When you get it to a detailer, basically you're refreshing the car. You're getting it back cosmetically to the day, even sometimes when it never was that good. Never looked that clean. Funnily enough, most of my close friends don't bring me their cars as much. I think they're more amazed with where I've come than me, if that makes sense. Because they're seeing this from a different perspective. I'm living this every day, essentially. I'm with supercars every other day. This year I've done supercars more than I have normal cars, really. I guess they're quite proud of where I've come with it and how the business has grown, as I don't think we really realized how far we could go when we were kids in secondary school, really. To be honest, the thing I hate the most is the fact that I'm surrounded by these supercars. I get to drive them inside and out of the garage, but obviously I can't drive them. My dream car is the Audi R8. My attainable dream car is a BMW M2. And just 2 weeks ago, I had both of those cars in my garage. And the fact that I was looking at these cars and knowing that they weren't mine is just heartbreaking sometimes. Like, I really wish they were just mine and I could drive them whenever I want, but obviously they're here for work to be done on them.